And good afternoon to you.
Hi, Helga. So
I'm
happy to have
so
you
happy
back.
to see you. I'm so happy to see you. You know, even though I didn't go very far, I was in Sarasota at the Hermitage Foundation
Mhm.
working on my piece with Sharonova. And I have to say, what was so great about being able to go away was not the going away, but the going away to have time to focus.
Mhm.
And I think it's such an important thing for us, for our institutions, for people who are in a position to donate, to continue to support the organizations that support artists in retreat situations, with residency opportunities, the way we do at National Sawdust, because it really gives you a chance to focus.
Right.
And so much of what we often don't have is the time and the resources. Often we have one or the other. We have time and no money, or we have money and no time
Right.
to keep working on our work. And I did miss you terribly. And it was awfully good to be able to be in one place and focus and write and make stuff for our project. And it made me think a lot about what we're doing now and what we do. That the that that residencies were built into the structure of National Sawdust, and I just came to appreciate all of that in a whole other way
Well, and I imagine this is the first time you've been away, since March, right?
since all of
And
this.
since all of this, and how important it is to be able to do what we do in a time that it's just getting increasingly harder to imagine a future as an artist and to be able to even get to do the work that we do on a daily basis and confronting those fears. And then that fear encased in the larger fear that you and I have been talking about that everyone in our country is experiencing for various reasons. I think is something that we're going to talk a little bit about today with our special guest,
Yeah.
and that is important to confront. This moment of fear and why it's important to not run from it, but to really look it in the eye and to ask why. Why am I feeling this way? So I feel lucky that one thing that I've felt with these times that we share with these artists that we love and each other is that it just reinforces the sense of community that we have, and I feel so blessed for. Um, so I'm going to introduce our special guest today,
Yes.
and someone who is very fearless in his music. A little bit about him. So Ted, I met Ted actually when I co-curated him for 21C Leader Robin, which was a vocal series that I curated with my good friend Beth Morrison. And I remember being so inspired by his breadth and ease as a composer, singer, band leader, recording artist. He was intensely political, personal, really thinking about visuals in a really holistic way. And he was able to encompass so many different styles, but with a very, singular voice. He's a Pulitzer Prize finalist for a work called Sound from the Bench, which is a work that essentially really looks into our American systems with themes ranging from U.S. Supreme Court oral arguments and inspired by the idea of corporate personhood. Place, which we're going to hear a little excerpt up from today, is his most recent collaboration with Saul Williams and director Patricia McGregor, and it meditates on the topic of gentrification and displacement. And the source was set text from the Iraq and Afghanistani war logs, along with words by Chelsea Mannings. Katrina Ballads was the very first piece of his that I heard. It won the Gaudiamus Prize in Composition. And he's a good friend, an incredible collaborator, and we're excited to have him. So let's welcome Ted.
Ted. Come out here,
I'm
Ted.
here. I'm here. Hi.
There
Hi.
you are. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. That was just a lovely introduction. So good to see
We
both
are
of
so happy to see you and to hear new work, and we're just happy to
you.
have you
Yeah,
on.
I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
And you know, it's the thing that we've been asking everyone because we never want to take it for granted. How are you?
Thank you for asking. I'm doing quite well. I think that all things considered, I'm lucky. I'm healthy. I have my family with me, and I'm here in LA. I'm able to do some work and able to communicate with people, even though most of it is not in person. So yeah, doing okay. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ted, we're gonna dive right into music, and then we're gonna, kind of meditate on what we've heard. So maybe
Great.
tell us what we're gonna hear today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was planning, before everything changed, planning to be at Sawdust this month and to curate a series, right? And part of that was going to be workshopping this new piece. So I thought that now that we have this digital realm, that it would be a really great opportunity to workshop it anyway, even though we can't actually be with anyone. But I'm really, really excited because we've put this together over the last few weeks, and it's just sort of a prototype of a new piece that I'm working on with the writer Chana Porter, based on her short story called Agnes in the Graveyard. And this is a piece that we've been sort of putting together and thinking about for a couple years now, I guess, which is really, it's the story of a young girl in a like a alternate United States, a different reality that is similar to our own, but not exactly our own, where the elements of the police state and authoritarian rule are slightly different in some really interesting ways. And that this is a piece that I want to write where there are instrumentalists and singers who are all combined together and sort of group storytelling, telling the story together. And so we wrote the first scene, and we have a cast of 6 in this piece, and it's just amazing what we can do in this time because I got to work with these incredible musicians who are friends of mine. Some of them I've worked with before on things. Some of them I've always wanted to and haven't. And people, I asked them to sing the music and capture themselves, their audio and their own video wherever they are in their quarantine spaces, and then edited it together and made essentially like it's a demo recording. I'm fond of it now because I've been working on it for a couple weeks. I think maybe it's a part of the piece, and we'll see what it is. But it's featuring. I just want to name the musicians because they're all so amazing. There's Eliza Bagg and Brookman, who are both singers. And I think in the live performance you'll see them playing synths and stuff as well, but they didn't do this in the video. And then Natalie Joachim and Sopp are both just incredible flute players and both incredible vocalists as well. And then Ayanna Woods and Chudzik are both playing electric bass, and Ayanna sings too. And Greg, created a patch that helps his bass sound differently, and it's really cool. So it's a real collaboration.
And so we're catching this at the very beginning. It's the first scene of the opera?
This would be the first scene of the piece, yeah.
Okay. And you did all the editing?
Yep.
Just to set that up? Okay, great.
Yep, did the editing, and it's about it's about 10 minutes, yeah.
All right, well, here we go.
Thank you so
Agnes
much.
in the Graveyard. We'll see you in a bit.
Before Leonard, no boy had ever told Agnes he would die for her. Her mother had said it, of course, and a few melodramatic girlfriends in night pledges at slumber parties. But her mother was the only one who said it and meant it. She said it lovingly, seriously, cheerfully, tenderly, as an afterthought before hanging up the phone. Mother's pledge was a drumbeat keeping time. on a school night. Mother was waiting up alone, pretending to read in the strained kitchen light. The words were sharp and desperate, their familiar meaning made alien. Mother held a hand to her own chest, pulling a face caught between smiling and tears. I would die for you. So, if you're dead somewhere in a ditch, how is that going to work? Agnes stood frozen, waiting. Then she saw her mother's anger pass through like a storm. Her own body softened. Mother wasn't mad anymore. She sighed. One day you'll have a daughter too, and you'll understand how I feel. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I would die for you. I would die for you.
Agnes knew Mother was a little bit proud of her daughter for staying out too late, or perhaps stealing a kiss or breaking a heart. But none of those things had happened. No, she'd simply lost track of time and then had to wait 45 minutes for Samantha Breyer to quit crying in the bathroom before driving her home.
So, anyone making you any pledges? Asked Mother lightly, turning off the kettle. Agnes snorted. I barely spoke to anyone. She fiddled with her tea bag. I guess I'm a late bloomer. Mother waved her hand in the air. Mother's pledge was a drumbeat, keeping time, shooing the thought away. Mother waved her hand in the air. Mother's pledge was a drumbeat, keeping late bloomer. That's something other people say about you, Agnes. Don't say that about yourself. Mother's pledge was a drumbeat, keeping shooing the thought away. Agnes's hazy, uneventful childhood. I would die for you. I would die before you.
Mother switched on the television. Oh, Hero Weddings was on. This episode was an absolute classic. A now paraplegic hero comes home to marry his childhood sweetheart. The state threw them the most beautiful wedding with the entire town as guests in a palatial ballroom, like something out of a fairy tale. Every detail was masterfully rendered, from napkins to centerpieces to strings of softly twinkling lights, an ice sculpture framed by melting swans and roses.
Agnes and her mother had heard the bride's vows so many times they could almost recite them, but it never failed to bring tears to their eyes. You have given your life to our country.
Agnes decided it was time for bed.
She had an algebra test in the morning. Mother only complained a little before letting her go. If Agnes wasn't careful, Mother would keep her up all night. Good night, my late bloomer, said Mother, eyes twinkling. Mother's pledge was a drumbeat keeping time. Good night, Mama. Agnes smiled and rolled her eyes.
Mother's pledge was a drumbeat keeping time.
Don't forget, you're a wild rose, your time will
Mother's pledge
come.
was a drumbeat keeping time.
Through Agnes's hazy, uneventful childhood, I would die for you. I would die for you. I would die for you. I would die for you.
Wow. That was incredible.
Sorry, I came back
Thanks.
early. I just
Oh,
was
that's
too
okay,
excited
that's
to
okay.
speak with you.
Ah, okay. It's okay. It's okay.
That was incredible. I feel
Thanks
like
so much.
I've been on a journey.
You
like
have
that.
been,
Yeah, that was
because
just
you have been.
yeah.
Thanks. I mean, it's incredible what you can do in this time, right? I mean, like we have to keep making work.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to, but like a lot of us do, and a lot of us want to, and you know, like the people that were involved in this, I mean, they were all so game, you know. I mean, and I think, I mean, everyone has their own life going on, but we're artists, so
Right.
you know.
Well, I'm so curious, first of all about the piece, and I want to ask you about that, but just in terms of how, so people watching understand how you put that together, could you just give us like a little map of, from the moment,
Sure.
of putting the notes on the page to like gathering this incredible group of collaborators?
Right. Well, I mean, you all asked me to be a part of this, and I just thought that it would be a really good deadline, essentially,
Yeah.
for starting this piece that we've been trying to start, that Chana and I have been trying to put together. So I mean, knowing that we had July 3rd as a deadline, I just a few weeks ago started like putting together the piece. Wrote a piece. Asked my friends if they were down to participate. And so wrote a piece for them, made a demo, I sang all the parts myself so people could hear them and sort of get
Right.
a
Okay.
sense of the piece, and then and then just made them backing tracks to record to, and then so
And
they
then
record
how did
to
you
that.
build, like in terms of like order, just to understand the sonic building of
I mean,
that?
I sort of wrote the piece first with my voice on top of it, and then made the synth parts. And Greg and Ayanna, I asked them to add bass parts too. I didn't really. I mean, I added some keyboard bass stuff to it and took that out later. But I mean, essentially they were given just sort of free rein to create what they wanted, and they created those incredible bass parts, which and Greg sort of built a patch with that, and then they recorded themselves afterwards doing that.
Okay.
And so when you're hearing them, they're playing live actually, and then the the singers also are. They added their own spin to it.
I love how all the, performers play different characters, and it just, there's something about art being made in this time that I just think is going to remain with us in a different way,
Hmm.
both as a chronicling of how we feel during this time, but then also, of course, how it's expanded our techniques as artists. Because, I mean, before this, you weren't really doing video, right?
Right. Not really. I mean,
Yeah.
I was interested in it, but no, I mean, it also, I mean, like we are like used to this like Zoom aesthetic all the time or whatever, right? And we the relation, like I'm looking at the two of your faces and we have this like connection that's happening right now, and we're just thinking in this different type of simultaneity and multiplicity, and like we're connecting visually in a way that we
Yeah,
didn't do as much before, and that just of course translates to the art that we make. And as composers, I think we sort of understand all that intuitively just with the world that we're in, so we can continue to make in that way. Also, it's just really nice to like I don't know, to sort of like get away from the idea that you need a like you always need like a super high production value for something, or it's like it just doesn't make sense right now, and
yeah,
like yeah, and so there's like you can see the expressivity in these things that are actually very cheaply made, or that there's like you can see
totally.
the rough patches in that, but that's like kind of part of the charm.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, what matters is, what you hear, what it sounds like, which is quality.
I
So,
think it's such a great point that you're making now, also for where we are when we think about kids who are graduating in this moment,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
who are facing a time when the avenues for, or the, let's say the prescribed and
Hmm.
the previous avenues for presenting and making work don't seem to be opening anytime soon.
Right.
And so there's a space in this for encouraging uh, the kids who are graduating now. Just will you speak to that a little bit? For
Yeah, well, yeah, of
someone that
course. Yeah, I mean,
is,
I'm on the faculty at USC out here in LA, and I have some really really amazing students, and seeing them. I mean, it of course it was like very sad actually to see this class of seniors who I really loved and like knew since they were freshmen, and to have their like last semester kind of like ripped away from them, and they had to say
Right.
goodbye over Zoom. I mean, that's like very sad, but and Helga, you're right, of course, that there's a sense of like, well, the prescribed way is not possible right now. Although my sense from talking to most of the students, most of the people in their generation, which is like maybe the greatest generation ever, this like generation of the Zoomers or whatever, they're they weren't. I don't think that most of them were like that keen on the prescribed methods as it was before. Anyway, I think that National Sawdust is maybe a like exception because because of the incredibly like social justice forward mission that you have, but like but most of the institutions in the art world and the classical music world like had a lot of issues, have a lot of
Yeah.
issues, and we see in this economy, but before any of this happened, I mean it's tricky. It's very tricky for artists to make a living, and it's there's a lot of issues with the system as it existed. So like what I've been more inspired by, I don't pity the generation that is that age. I'm like very inspired by the way that they're responding to COVID, and they're responding to this uprising in this
Hmm.
way that is just like, about creating a better future, and everyone of that age that I've talked to, I'm sure that, it's like there's an understanding this is some dark times happening, but like, that's where I get my hope from, is the idea that they're like, no, the way that it was before is not enough. It's not okay.
And it wasn't sustainable. I mean, in the sense of like
Absolutely
sustainable,
not.
if you actually care about democracy and you care about equity, I think one
Hmm.
of the things, that I think is important, I mean, is maybe even for our generation to maintain active hope. Because I think that there was a sense of needing to kind of destroy structures. And right now, I think we have a chance to really intentionally build in a new way. And I think that's exciting. And I do hope that Zoomers, with their sense of active hope, can help, rebuild, because it's really where we're at as an industry, which I think is very exciting.
Yeah.
Um, But I
Yeah,
do
totally.
think that we're living in a moment of great uncertainty, and I think, the next year is going to take people kind of stepping into positions of leadership to help form ways forward, so that our industry doesn't kind of collapse, because there is the reality of people being out of work and people not knowing how to move forward. So it's going to take everybody kind of coming forward with ideas and with ways of rebuilding that don't look like the ways that we came from, which is, I think, a really good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and that, I think that may be scary for some of us who are a little bit older to imagine what that future is, or maybe it's just more difficult to imagine that future where, the positions that we had, or the ways that we thought about the ecosystem that we were existing in, that is actually going to be different. It has to be different because it needs to be more equitable, and we have to see that, I think and we should probably listen to the younger generation, really, in terms of all their ideas about that, even if some of them seem pie in the sky, or some of them seem like, people are being, too persnickety about little ideas. We have to listen to them, because like they're the ones who can imagine, they can really
Well, it makes me think about, kind of different formats. And I was looking on Netflix the other day, and there was this like new show that was 10 minutes long per episode. And I was like, oh, like I wouldn't watch that. And I was like, well, why wouldn't I watch that? It's the same way that you would like watch an Instagram video or TikTok. And so I'm wondering, with this piece specifically, will it post-pandemic, will you think about how to expand and disseminate this piece in a different way because of the time that we're in and because of the
going
format?
straight to TikTok. No, I don't.
Straight to TikTok.
I don't know. I mean, the thing that's really exciting about this is that we have this opportunity. This is the reason that this video existed in this way, right? Is that like Chana and I like really wanted to workshop this piece, and I think that and her short story is really brilliant, and I think that there's a dreaminess and a vagueness to it that speaks to or that is going to help it be malleable for the time that we are in right now,
and the fact that everyone in solitude, I think, is actually really important to the piece. There was something about them not being in the same space that actually made me feel
I think
more
you're right.
profoundly for them. I don't know. Maybe I'm putting on top of it.
No, not at all. But like group storytelling with people in these completely isolated spaces. Yeah. I think there's something really powerful about that. But also the just sort of like the political implications of the short story. Like we're really interested in workshopping it. So we made it for this, and I think we're going to work with the director Taby Magar, who's amazing. We had planned to do some sort of staged version or something that's a performance with her, and who knows when that's possible. So like hopefully she'll.
Why wait?
Right. I mean, we can do this. I would love to. I mean, we're going to write more of the piece, and like maybe I think it should exist as like a video in this way, and we can like continue to add to it. Maybe it's a serial, maybe, and then, or maybe it's all just a prototype for when we get to be in the same live space again. I'm not really sure yet. And that's the beauty of like just making it,
and I think that, the thing is that as we're kind of going forward in this moment where we're really thinking about like digital expansion of form, the next logical way is like how people ingest it and the monetizing of it. And why not think of things that way as well, right? Like so far, I think we're all, especially in our kind of super, new music niche, kind of not thinking of it that way, but populist art form has always existed to be able to make a living. So what if this was, a 10-part series that was on Netflix or was on the equivalent, and I think as we begin to feel comfortable with this form, I think those are going to be some of the interesting things that come out of it. You mentioned something about like the political underpinning. Can you just tell us a little bit about Chana's short story?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the short story, we find ourselves in an alternate America, which is essentially like there's a small town, and I love this story because there's this like, it has this sort of like a vague like 1950s, like this sort of like this nostalgic
married to America.
Like, yes. This idea of like what America is this sort of like this haze of that idea, but we're definitely in modern times as well. And there's we treat in this America, we like treat our veterans differently, right? War is like a present force in everyone's life, and people don't say I love you, they say I would die for you. and so we have it's a coming of age story with Agnes growing up, and it's also sort of a coming into political consciousness story as she meets an artist who is developing a war memorial that is actually an anti-war memorial. And I think that we are thinking about this as a piece that explores the connection of our militarism and our police state, and the violence that we experience in this country, but we're in a workshop stage, so
Right.
It's like I can't, then you've heard the entire piece as it exists so far, so it's an exciting mystery ahead in terms of like what it's going to be.
I think one of the things I wanted to just interject here is, Paola, you just said, why couldn't it be a series on Netflix? And I think because it's Netflix, right?
Sure. Yeah. That infrastructure
trust
does
me,
not.
I love my bag of potato chips and my truffled potato chips and my glass of Viognier and my Netflix. I love that. And I think it is also counterintuitive to everything that we're talking about now to imagine it there, or to imagine that that is the only place it can exist. And that in addition to following this path and saying, well, I'm actually going to learn this program, and then I'm going to get my friends to come in and play, and I'm going to make this thing, that we also have to start thinking about making the platforms.
Absolutely.
That's such a good point, Helga.
Onto which
they can live.
These things can live.
That's
so
such a
I
good
get
point.
my email from the film forum every week, and I can support the film forum by paying $10 and watching something that I can't actually go there and watch right now. Well, there's a thing there, right? And there's a thing that helps support film forum, and that someone, and whoever's watching this that's already thinking about this, help us continue to think about, maybe there's a piece from Ted, there are 5 pieces or 3 pieces that you get in an afternoon, and that you have them for 48 hours.
I love that.
And you pay $10, and we go and we support each other's work. Or maybe you can gift it to someone the same way that you would do an Apple Tunes,
right?
Or a book, or anything. And that because those structures exist already, and we know support many people and many shareholders, that we become our own shareholders in our products.
There's so much power in that.
And that we support one another in that way too.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that. That's such a cool way of thinking about it, in terms of really democratizing the form, but also, taking ownership over that. And then, last thing I'll just say is, it's the artist, but then it's also the audiences. I was talking to a good friend of mine yesterday, who, has a son with a very involved case of cerebral palsy. And she was saying that in her community, all of a sudden this time has opened up a tremendous sense of, I belong, I'm invited, I can come. And let us not, after this, forget that, with all the complexity, this has also opened up a door. And how do we not close that door, right? On so many things. Let's open the door on place. Tell us a little bit about place.
Oh yeah, well.
That's because I think we're gonna.
Oh, is it time to roll out already? Yeah, well.
I don't know. These times go so quickly.
I know. Place is a piece that I wrote with the incredible poet and mind, Saul Williams. And this is a piece that explores displacement and housing and gentrification from a
specific to LA or?
No, I mean, it started. I started the piece a long time ago when I was thinking about the piece when I was living in Fort Greene in Brooklyn. I had worked with Saul on another piece with the Mivos Quartet, and we hit it off, and I asked him to be a part of it. And, we'd both lived in Fort Greene at different times. And so, we determined that I was going to write this piece where I would sort of write an opening text, sort of thoughts about, considering my impact in the cycle of gentrification or in the city, like my role as an artist in this neighborhood, in this city, and the culture of the city, and give it to Saul. And he was going to respond with libretto for the piece. And then I would set the entire text. So that's what the piece is, and it was commissioned by Beth Morrison Projects and the LA Phil. And then, the LA Phil premiere, which was scheduled for March, whatever, this year, was canceled along with everything else. And so this, this is the opportunity that I took to sort of learn, just to dip my feet into editing software. And, because the entire cast in this piece is over an hour long, and the cast is just so wonderful. And we had recorded the album with an amazing band. And Nick Tipp produced it. It's just so the album had just come out, so we had
ready to go.
Yeah, we had these backing tracks, and the cast had the piece totally in their bodies. So we recorded the piece in their quarantine spaces, and actually it somehow spoke to the content of the piece a lot. And we worked with Patricia McGregor, who is going to direct the stage production, but there is something that was just really exactly what you were talking about earlier, Paola, the idea of people in their isolated spaces communicating with each other, and to see this piece about place, and the sort of the urban landscape and the different overlapping maps that we all have, to see it from the broadcasting from people's homes, and they filmed most of it was filmed right at the beginning of COVID quarantine, so there's a sort of sense of urgency about it. And then to see how the artists, those 6 artists who were in the show, the impact of the pandemic affected them differently, and so some of the singers, they directly because this gig was canceled, they had to drive a Lyft, and one of them literally got evicted from their home, and then captured it on the camera. So it's part of the movie basically. And
so it's a real evolution from the theatrical piece that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And so I just gave you guys a little clip to show, but we premiered it on WNYC a few weeks ago, and you can watch the stream on YouTube there, or you can watch it on their Facebook feed.
Okay, great. We'll put that link in the comments. So
great.
let's watch it.
Let's watch.
Okay, cool.
Is it okay? Is it okay?
What about my son? 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 What about my son?
What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son?
What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son?
What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son?
What about my son? What about my son? What about my son?
What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son?
What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son?
What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son? What about my son?
This may come as some surprise, but I miss you.
What about my son? What about my son?
What about my son? What about my son?
What about my son? What about my son? My son.
What about my son? What about my son? What about my son?
What about my son? My son. My son. My son. What about my son?
I'd rather not talk about it. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about history.
I bet you don't.
You don't want to talk. You don't want to talk.
You don't want to talk.
You don't want to talk.
You don't wanna. You don't wanna. It's
Too heavy,
it's
too dark.
too tiring, too useless to think about.
That's incredible.
Thanks. I don't know. It's interesting just to. I never would have imagined that that like these big pieces that we are used to building up and like working on for so long and seeing in this like space together in a theater,
Yeah.
that like that they actually are resonant and maybe even more resonant like in this forum,
Yeah.
like
I mean,
looking at
I
them on the
s-
internet or whatever.
totally. I saw this piece at BAM, and I was up in the rafters, and I loved it. And this though is there's just I remember this piece in the theater piece, and now I'm seeing it here, and I feel like it's even more potent. And I don't know if it's where we are, right now in this situation with the conversations that we're having, but it's incredible, and the way it's shot. I think the fact that I was actually watching it, I was like, oh, I wonder if he wrote himself out of the piece. Because I didn't see that, I didn't see the WNYC version, so it's the first time I'm seeing it. And the fact that you come in where you do in the piece, with what you say it's strong, and I think how a
Thanks.
lot
I
of
mean,
white people are feeling right now. They're afraid, which is
yeah, I
yeah,
don't know. I think we're at an incredible moment of porousness, I think, and we we need to discuss with each other. We need to be open, and we need to think about ways that we can expand the definitions that we like thought were hard and make them open.
yep,
We need to move forward and with openness and vulnerability.
yeah,
And yeah, I'm really I'm proud of the artists that were in that piece a lot, because they brought so much vulnerability to the piece. It's vulnerable to like film yourself in your own space, especially at
mm,
the beginning of COVID when people were used to doing that all the time. But also
yeah,
just their performances and the things that they were willing to show as a part of it. And that
totally.
you just saw a little bit of it, but it gets deep in the piece, and that's because the artists were willing to, make themselves vulnerable and show their underbelly, show the sides of themselves that they're not necessarily like super proud of, or that they put forward as their performance space. That's the thing, it's like before the piece was people on a stage, and like,
Mm.
how this was actually just people in their homes. So
And
it's rough
also,
in a way.
again, audiences, right? Who gets to see this? And hopefully a lot of people will get to see it, because the theater by nature is a privileged experience that, immediately,
Of course.
kind of cuts people out of a conversation that really needs to be having. So maybe with the new systems that we're building, these conversations and pieces like this can come out
Yeah, I mean,
and help people talk more.
absolutely, and accessibility in terms of like who has access to the space,
Mm,
and equitability. Like these issues need to be at the forefront of however we reimagine the institutions and the spaces that we're leading or that we're a part of.
What I think is also beautiful about the writing of this bit in particular is that it gives us permission to get off the page a little bit in the ways that we're taught to be on a page. So, you go to school, and if you're in a certain program, you are working on how fast, how many, how well you can play the most notes, give the most ideas, and just there's this kind of vomit that comes,
Mm.
uh, that that can be not thoughtful, and how much power there is in knowing the one thing you want to say and to say it over and over and over and over and over again until it's clear that you need to say something else, which is a different way of thinking about composition, which is a different way of thinking about presentation, which is a different way of thinking about the experience of actually having to say the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And to keep finding your way inside the one thing, right? Before you move on to the next thing.
Totally. And yeah, and in the Saul Williams actually talked about that exact thing in the conversation that we had after the piece, which you can see on the WNYC stream. But because that this is one of the first pieces. I think this is maybe the first poem that he wrote in response to what I wrote. And my text was like thinking about sort of like, well, okay, like how did the structures of white supremacy, as much as I try to like take them out, like how do they filter from father to son and blah 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 blah, and like what about my son in this situation? And Saul, I think, is he talks about it much better than me, but the way he says, like, the first thought was like, what about my son? And I just wrote it on the page, and I wrote it over and over again. I wrote it about 200 times, and then and it's like and then that became a challenge to like, well, how to set that music,
right? Yeah. It's so beautiful, because you're clearly capable of writing more, to have made the choice to write less, so that actually we can feel more. So it's not the meaning and the integrity and the intention of the language isn't lost or glossed over because there's more of it, right? It's just beautiful.
No, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And I just want to say, like, I feel like every great composition teacher that I've ever had, and I include Saul Williams in that, has basically said that in some way, right? It's just basically like looked at something I've done and been like, just do that one. Just do that. Like, isn't that what you really want to say? Like, just that one thing, not like all the rest of that shit. Yeah.
That's great. I'm gonna take that back to my writing today. Like just that. This has been an incredible conversation. I'm being told that we're gonna wrap up, but I know this idea though of intentionality and really kind of looking at the things we want to say and how we want to say them and being open and porous. It's
and creating our systems now.
Yes. Thank you, Helga. That reflect where we're at.
That reflect where we are, but also support where we are, so that we're not going to go back to the places and the institutions who didn't want our work for permission to do our work. That we must do it. Yeah. And as we go, build an infrastructure where, if it's pay what you can, if it's whatever it is, so that we can support each other. This must also be part of this path forward. And I look forward to hearing from anyone who is already thinking about this, and to us being able to continue to gather and to let everybody know how we're thinking about these things and what we're actually doing in order to make that happen.
I love it. And I think we've planted a seed for next year here.
Yay. Totally. It's so great to see you, Ted. Thank you. Thank you.
Ted, it's so good to see you. And for those of you listening in, we will see you next week on Friday with Laura St. John. Laura St. John, who's an amazing violinist and activist. Thank you so much, Ted. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.